Welcome back. On the auspicious occasion of Vijay Dashmi, a foundation for Indian historical and cultural research was announced. Now, this body aims to course correct Indian historical narrative. The organization believes that it is time that the Indic lion found its own historical narrative, told by its own scholars, assessed through its own lenses, definitions and yardsticks. Several scholars, corporates, institutions and universities will be collaborating in this task. FIHCR will be incubated within relevant academic institutes and universities and involve experts in their fields to critically investigate the findings and come around to a broad consensus on Indian history. And to talk more about this, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Vikram Sampath, historian and founder of the FIHCR. Vikram, thanks a lot for your time. Let me begin by saying that you have mentioned on social media when you announced this yesterday that we seek to create a new fact-based narrative on Bharatiya Itihas from a nationalistic perspective and truly Indic lens. Now, nationalism is a much maligned term in the left-dominated academia. So when you say nationalistic perspective, can you explain what does that mean?
Yes. Thank you, Shivani. It's a great pleasure to be on your show, and thank you for being the first one to talk to me on this idea since the time it was announced. Just before I answer your question, a little bit about the history of Indian historiography itself. In the 18th and 19th centuries, you had the Scottish historian James Mill, who in his History of British India, decided everything about India, her culture, her past, her history, and so on, and called it the most perverse and really it's something that outraged him. And almost in retaliation to his diatribe against Indian history and culture, even under colonial rule, the irony was that we had a series of rebuttals, which several people, since we were a slave nation, you couldn't openly come out and rebut your colonial master's claims, but anonymous articles that were written as the first Hindu, the second Hindu, the third Hindu, largely emanating in the 1840s from Maharashtra, these started rebutting James Mill's claims. And I think that laid the foundation of what is broadly termed as the nationalist school of historiography. And you had some very, very eminent scholars who came thereafter, R.C. Majumdar, Sir Jadunath Sarkar, V.K. Rajwade, G.S. Sardesai, and later on, of course, people like Sitaram Goyal, Dharampal, and several others. I mean, this is just a snapshot of people I'm mentioning. But unfortunately, and the irony, Shivani, is that what we could achieve even in colonial rule, where an alternative version of what the colonial master was presenting to us, the freedom was there for our scholars then to provide. Ironically, after independence, that voice got completely throttled. You had a hegemonistic version of a very, very ideological, a very linear, a very simplistic kind of a narrative of what our history was, and I'll name it as the Marxist school, and which dominated all our academia, and especially from the 1970s, with the establishment of the ICHR and the political help that Indira Gandhi's government needed from the Marxists, the left parties, to survive. She bartered away the academia and some of the institutions to the left parties, who made it their stranglehold. And since then, there's been a complete, snuffing out of alternative voices in a discipline like this, which thrives on multiplicity of opinions, on differences, discussions, debates, dissent. That's bedrock of a democracy too, but that has never been allowed, in academic historiography. The second aspect is most of them follow a certain narrative of India, of looking back about our own country and its past with a sense of apologia, only emphasizing on the negatives, not giving credit where it is due, not, a historian's role is not to, stir up jingoism and all of that, but the converse is also not true, where you constantly feel ashamed about your past and the mistakes of the past, and the unethical practices, the unscholarly practices that many of these people indulged in, which has been brought to light several decades ago by the likes of Mr. Arun Shourie in his eminent historians, and also Dr. Meenakshi Jain in her book Battle for Rama, where I think the lid broke open, where in the Ayodhya case, many of these evidences actually lied blatantly in court, gave false testimonials, false evidences, and actually stirred up so much of animosity between the two communities,
Yes.
which otherwise resolved this issue very peacefully. So I think history was such an important tool, even in today's times, to solve many of these social issues. The sad part is we had outsourced this for a very long time to only one group of people. Now, I don't want to presumptuously say that this very small, very baby step that I've taken along with like-minded friends and scholars is something that's going to like totally alter the landscape. It's going to take a long time.
But it's a beginning.
It's a beginning which was, I think, long overdue, and it was dying to be made, because for the longest time, the non-left only whines and complains and keeps cribbing, so and so has written this, so and so has written this, but nobody really
was countering it. Understood.
in creating that alternative scholarship. Or the easiest way is to blame the government, saying the government is not doing anything and all of that. But instead of being cribbers, I think for a change, you need to be a doer. And that is exactly what was the guiding light between for the foundation of the FI.
No, absolutely. It's a credit-worthy journey that you've embarked on, and all the very best. Since you mentioned that we were being judged by historians who were fundamentally not Indian and they didn't have the Indian perspective, I want to understand, are you wanting to, do work as part of FIHCR more so that, is it for Indians, the outcomes of that work, or is it also to set the narrative right for Westerners and foreigners?
I think for both, Shivani, we I think a lot of the themes that we are looking at investigating would historical themes which have a lot of contemporary relevance, and also by going I must emphasize, as your slides there are showing, or by going to the primary sources. For the longest time in India, probably the only country where you can pass off as a expert on ancient Indian history without knowing a single word of Sanskrit or Prakrit or Pali or any of the classical languages, Sen Tamil and any of those. You can be a medieval Indian historian and an expert and a celebrated one, and I'm not taking any names here, your viewers who I'm talking about. They have openly said, we don't know any Persian and Arabic. How does that really work? You're then relying only on translations by Westerners, which come with their own biases and lost in translations. So I thought, if me as a modern historian today, if I have to learn Sanskrit, and to master that, where in Vedic Sanskrit, one word can have 20 meanings, depending on the context, that would take me one lifetime. So instead, can we look at multidisciplinary groups where a linguist, a Sanskrit Pandit, works along with a geologist or an archaeologist, a geneticist who's probably going to say, if you're investigating the caste system, was there endogamy? When did intercaste marriages start? Or when did that stop? These kind of issues, with also a modern historian who's English, speaking and trained, form these small working groups of multidisciplinary scholars and come out and go to the primary sources without any kind of preconceived idea.
Or biases.
Good, bad, whatever comes out, let it come out. And then these findings can then find a place both nationally and internationally through academically, peer-reviewed journals and through popular books, which is what a lot of people read. And third and more important arm of dissemination being social media and
Absolutely.
the like.
In today's day and age, that has of course become fundamental.
Yes.
To reach the common public. I do want to say that in one of your plaques that you posted on Twitter or X now, you said that you will not shy away from the numerous landmines and talk about the uncomfortable truths. Now, let me tell you, first of all, when I launched this show, Plain Speak, one of the lines that I had in my promo was that this show is going to be about uncomfortable truths. So could you tease our viewers exactly, give me an example of what are those historical landmines and uncomfortable truths you will first address?
Oh my God, I think our history being so long and stormy, it's full of only landmines. And for the longest time, I think we have shied away from talking about these what I've called, and you say, uncomfortable truths, the issue of invasions, the issue of, the way our culture was attacked, our temples destroyed, our centers of learning, demolished, and all of that. We somehow think we should not talk about this, brush it all under the carpet, and think that talking about this somehow upsets contemporary social cohesion among communities. And I think that is absolutely unfair even to communities today, that you are hyphenating them with invaders and telling them that you need to win their goodwill, you need to whitewash
What happened in the past? Yes.
whatever atrocities happened in the past. I think you need to dehyphenate them and tell people today that these are not your heroes, and those who actually valorize such barbarians are really not on the side of India. That is one. Several other things. I mean, the caste system. Let us critically analyze how did this grow? When did it solidify? Was it always in the manner that it was? Was there upward social mobility? Was there intercaste communions? All of this. When did that solidify? And what do our primary sources basically say in all these classical languages? What is the status of the cow? In the Vedic era,
yes.
At some point was the cow being sacrificed? At some point, did she become a very holy animal for the post-Vedic people? So, whatever as I said, without any preconceived ideas about things, state fact as it is. Itihasa itself in Sanskrit, it translates to "it thus happened." So without any kind of political expediency or today's compulsions that we have, say things as they are, and I think make peace with your past. I keep saying this word of truthifying Indian history. I think for the longest time we've been playing a farce on our past by actually pushing many things under the carpet. I think it's time now. We are a mature democracy with 75 years post-independence. A lot of this could be spoken about, including the history of the freedom movement, which, as a historian of modern India, that's been my area, even in my research on Savarkar and so on.
Absolutely. You set the record straight on Savarkar, and that in itself has had a seminal shift in the way the discussions around Savarkar take place today. So many congratulations on that. But you did mention these landmines, you mentioned invasions, you mentioned some of the conversions in the past. Now, the Mughal period or Mughal history is something which keeps coming back as far as contemporary politics is concerned. Would you say a lot of your effort and time would go in, I wouldn't say correcting, but talking about the Mughal period?
I don't think so. I think we have a host of issues in every era to actually address. Because, and I don't want to peg it to contemporary politics and political discourse at all. If politicians and political parties and groups, use some of the material that comes out, as many people appropriated even some of my work on Savarkar. That is just coincidental. That's not something that was intended from my side. But then obviously history is so much in your face today, only because I think we've not, truthfully and honestly addressed some of these issues. Every time you try subterfuge and, whitewash, the truth has a very strange manner of manifesting itself. And I think that's why you see these landmines all the time. We saw it in Ayodhya. We are seeing what's happening with the Gyanvapi case. We're seeing it in Mathura. We see it in this whole renaming, of places and, this whole decolonization narrative that people are talking about. It's only because, as I said, for the longest time, we've not addressed the issues and looked them in the eye and said, this is it. Nobody today is responsible for any of this, but we're just stating things as they are and moving on for a better future.
Yes.
I think that is important when it comes to history as long, stormy and fractured as Indian history.
Well, history shouldn't be a casualty to contemporary politics, that is one. But it was also said, Vikram Sampath, that history is one of those very important bastions, if I may use that word, which is extremely important in defining the journey or even the future of a country. So in that respect, it's going to be a tough job, but it's a very important job. Very quickly, I've got 30 seconds. Is it going to be difficult to fund this? Are you looking at more people to help? How are you going to fund such an exercise which has been so difficult even for governments to do?
Yeah. No, true. That's true. I think, but then there's been a lot of goodwill. I live in Bangalore, the city of startups, and a lot of, new generators here who want to do something for the country, who want to do something, they don't have the personal time to go into all of this. But if someone is taking the baton and doing this, I think a lot of them have expressed interest to fund this. Several universities in India have also expressed interest to incubate some of these projects with their premises. So we're not looking at any huge setup costs, a huge building. Usually governments would end up, spending on a white elephant of a huge building,
Right.
staff, and all of that. We're not doing any of that. But then having these focus groups, study groups, which will churn out material, which can be accessed by Indians and people outside through various means and platforms.
All right. I wish you all the best, Dr. Vikram Sampath. Thanks a lot for joining us. It was a great announcement on an auspicious day, and we wish you all the very best in this endeavor.
Thank you. Thank you, Shivani.
On that note, time for me to take your leave. The Hard Facts is coming up on the other side.